The concrete bunker smelled of damp earth and cigarette smoke, a tomb built for the living. Deep in the Masurian woods of East Prussia, where birch trees stood like skeletal sentries and morning fog clung to the ground like poison gas, the Wolfschanze, the wolf's lair, crouched beneath camouflage netting and the weight of a collapsing empire. Adolf Hitler stood before the map table, his left hand trembling slightly, a tremor he could no longer fully control. The September light filtering through the narrow window slits fell across topographical maps of Italy like accusatory fingers. Red pins marked Wehrmacht positions. Blue pins, fewer each day, marked what remained of Mussolini's forces. Black pins, clustered around Rome, marked the problem. Badoglio hat uns verraten. Hitler's voice was soft, which his generals knew to fear more than his rages. Badoglio has betrayed us. The Duce rescued from that mountain prison, and already the jackal's circle. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel shifted his weight, the leather of his boots creaking in the oppressive silence. The OKW chief had learned the choreography of these audiences, when to speak, when to remain silent, when to nod with just enough vigor to suggest agreement without commitment. Mein Führer, our intelligence confirms the Marshal is negotiating with Eisenhower's representatives. The armistice could be announced within days. Hitler's right fist crashed against the table. Pins jumped. A water glass toppled, spreading across the Italian peninsula like a flood. No one moved to right it. Und wer orchestriert dies aus dem Schatten? Hitler's pale eyes fixed on the map. On the tiny speck of territory labeled Stato della Città del Vaticano. And who orchestrates this from the shadows? Who whispers treason into Catholic ears from his marble palace while German soldiers die? The generals exchanged glances. They had learned to read the Führer's obsessions, to track his paranoid conspiracies the way meteorologists tracked storms. This one had been building for weeks. What you're witnessing right now isn't speculation or dramatization. This actually almost happened. Hitler really did order planning for the kidnapping of Pope Pius XII. The documents exist, the reconnaissance reports, the testimony. Over the next chapters, we're uncovering exactly how close the Vatican came to Nazi occupation and who prevented it. If you love deep dive history with full complexity, subscribe now, and you won't want to miss what happens when these conspiracies collide. Now back to September 1943, where Hitler's orders are about to reach the men who will have to execute them. SS Obergruppenführer Karl Wolff, commander of all SS forces in Italy, stepped forward. At 43, Wolff possessed the lean handsomeness of a Prussian officer, the dead eyes of a bureaucrat of murder, and, increasingly, the survival instincts of a rat on a sinking ship. He had seen the reports from the Eastern Front. He had heard the whispers about Stalingrad, about Kursk. He knew what the others in this room refused to admit. Germany was losing. The Vatican maintains its neutrality publicly, Wolff said carefully. But Pope Pius XII has extensive connections with the Allies. His nuncio in Washington, his sympathies for the Americans. He let the implication hang. Sympathien. Hitler spat the word. Sympathies. Der Bischof von Rom sitzt in seinem goldenen Palast, umgeben von Verrätern und Juden, und wagt es, neutral zu bleiben, während das Reich für die Zivilisation selbst kämpft. The Bishop of Rome sits in his golden palace, surrounded by traitors and Jews, and dares to remain neutral while the Reich fights for civilization itself. General Alfred Jodl, chief of the OKW Operation Staff, cleared his throat. A dangerous gesture. Mein Führer, the Vatican is sovereign territory. An incursion would have significant diplomatic ramifications. Hitler turned slowly, his gaze settling on Jodl with the intensity of a raptor selecting prey. Diplomatische Auswirkungen. His voice dripped with contempt. Diplomatic ramifications. We have already violated Belgian neutrality, Polish borders, Soviet non-aggression pacts. Glauben Sie wirklich, dass mich die imaginäre Souveränität des Bischofs von Rom beunruhigt? Do you truly believe the Bishop of Rome's imaginary sovereignty concerns me? The bunker seemed to contract, the recycled air growing thinner. Outside, beyond the reinforced walls, SS guards paced their routes. Somewhere in the woods, an encrypted telegram was being decoded, bringing news of another retreat, another catastrophe papered over with lies. Ich will not fall plain. Hitler's voice had returned to that dangerous softness. I want contingency plans. The Vatican must be secured. The Pope must be placed under protective custody for his own safety and that of the Church. He smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf indeed. Wir können nicht zulassen, dass der Bischof von Rom in bolschewistische Hände fällt, oder? We cannot allow the Bishop of Rome to fall into Bolshevik hands, can we? Protective custody. The room's occupants knew this euphemism well. Protective custody had swallowed political opponents, racial enemies, and anyone unfortunate enough to be protected by the Reich. Protective custody meant cattle cars and camps, interrogations and ash. Keitel found his voice, pitched to convey complete agreement while committing to nothing specific. Of course, mein Führer, we shall prepare appropriate contingencies. General Kesselring in Rome will be consulted. Kesselring. Hitler waved dismissively. The Luftwaffe general plays at politics. Dies erfordert at vision. Kühnheit. His gaze fell on Wolf. This requires vision, audacity. You are closer to the situation. You understand what is required. Wolf's face remained impassive, but his mind raced through calculations. Kidnap the Pope. Violate Vatican sovereignty. The worldwide Catholic response. Bavaria and Austria might rebel. South America would erupt. Even Franco's Spain might reconsider its position. And yet, refusing Hitler's implicit command meant, what? A posting to the Eastern Front if he was lucky. A bullet if he wasn't. I will prepare detailed operational studies, Wolf said, his voice steady. The Vatican's defenses, the Swiss Guard capabilities, optimal extraction routes to the Reich. Gut. Hitler turned back to the maps, dismissing them with his indifference. Gut. Der Bischof von Rom denkt, seine Mauern schützen ihn. Er vergisst, dass Mauern durchbrochen werden können. Dass Souveränität nur existiert, wenn stärkere Männer sich entscheiden, sie anzuerkennen. The Bishop of Rome thinks his walls protect him. He forgets that walls can be breached, that sovereignty exists only when stronger men choose to recognize it. The generals filed out into the narrow concrete corridor, past sentries who stared straight ahead, past the Enigma machines that clattered with their encrypted lies, past the stenographers recording history for a 1,000-year Reich that would barely last 12. Wolf walked alone back to his quarters, past the tea house where the Führer took his vegetarian meals, past the situation room where pins fell like soldiers. In his mind, he was already composing the reports, detailed enough to satisfy, vague enough to delay. He was already imagining the conversations he would need to have, the warnings he might need to give. Because Karl Wolf, mass murderer and war criminal, possessed one quality that Hitler had long since abandoned. He could still recognize a catastrophic mistake when ordered to commit one. And kidnapping the Pope of Rome, even in September 1943, even as the Reich crumbled, was a catastrophe that might be avoided. If he was clever enough, if he was quick enough, if he could play the role of loyal SS officer while sabotaging the very orders he pretended to prepare. The wolf's lair exhaled smoke into the gathering dusk. Somewhere in Rome, in a marble palace surrounded by enemies, an old man in white robes said his evening prayers, unaware of the orders being drafted, the trains being requisitioned, the contingency plans bearing his name. The plot has begun in the wolf's lair, but in Rome, something else is already happening. Ambassador Weizsäcker stares at the telegram from Berlin. Operation Eiche. 2 weeks preparation. He makes a decision that will define the rest of his life. He's going to warn the Vatican. Will his warning arrive in time? Will anyone believe a Nazi diplomat? Can Vatican City prepare for what's coming? You'll find out in Chapter 2, The Marble Fortress. We're going inside Vatican City itself, meeting the Swiss guards preparing for invasion, witnessing the Pope's impossible choices, and discovering the underground network ready to hide even the Vicar of Christ. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss it, as this story unfolds in coming chapters, each revealing another layer of conspiracy, another close call, another impossible choice. Like this video if you're invested. That simple click helps more people discover this untold story. And comment. If you were Pope Pius XII in September 1943, surrounded by Nazi forces, would you flee or stand your ground? The sword hangs over Vatican City. Chapter 2 reveals who's trying to cut the rope. See you in the Marble Fortress.